Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of AI Inside, the show where we take a look at the AI that is layered throughout so much of the world of technology. We've got an exciting couple of weeks. We've got some really cool stuff coming up, but we won't get there quite yet. I do want to bring in my co-host, Jeff Jarvis. How you doing, Jeff?
Hi there. How are you? Once again, I accidentally had you running on the other screen.
I was going to say,
I was
I
hearing two
just heard
Jasons.
myself.
And then again, I think I can figure out the mute button by now, Grandpa. Sorry.
Good to see you.
Good
No,
to
it's
see
fine.
you.
It's as long as it's not like my voice echoing back into my ear a split
That's the
second
confusing
later.
part. Yeah.
Yeah, that gets really confusing. I've definitely been there. Good to see you. Good to have you here, Jeff. I want to throw out a quick thank you and props to our patrons, patreon.com/AI Inside Show. William Wilkinson is this week's patron of amazingness. So, William, thank you for your support of everything that we do here. We couldn't do this without you. If you haven't already, leave us a review or rate the show, whatever, in your podcatcher of choice. Apple Podcasts is a great place to go to do that. It helps gain or increase the exposure of the show, and that is a big part of what we're doing right now.
And let's
Because
also
we got
mention real
yeah.
quickly that because you were just telling me how Daniel Croft, who's in the chat room right now and is often here watching, has been very helpful to the show. So thank you, Daniel. We're very grateful.
Yes, indeed. Daniel is a longtime fan of the show and the work that both you and I have done over the years. And he reached out to me and he's like, "Can I help you guys in some way? Because I have some experience in this stuff." And so, if you've seen an uptick of like social media promotion, that's because Daniel's been helping behind the scenes. And
And
so
I get all
he's
happy
just
when I'm
been.
on TikTok and I say, "There's Jan LeCun. We talked to
I
him. That's
know.
ours." And so I don't know. TikTok confuses me because not everything is shareable with your followers. I don't know
Yeah.
how that works. I cannot figure out TikTok. But anyway, I'm delighted. I like everything that I.
Yes, yeah, it's amazing the work that he is doing and kind of trying to increase the visibility. In the shorts game is all about spraying out the moments. And I mean, when it comes to Jan LeCun interview, there's just an intense amount of moments there. We've got some really cool interviews coming up, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. So there's lots of opportunities, and so we're seeing what we can do to bring more people through the door of AI Inside. So AIinside.show is where you can go if you just need the webpage to find out what we're all about. That being said, we've got a lot of news and a lot of things this week that really kind of interplay well with each other. So it's going to be information dense this time around. And, we'll start not with OpenAI as we often do, but with Duolingo, because Duolingo has been making news the last couple of weeks when it comes to AI. Go figure. They're not one of the usual players that you are used to hearing about and from. But nonetheless, Duolingo had announced earlier this week that they are, quote, officially AI first. And for those who don't know, you probably know Duolingo, but they've been around for a little more than a decade, I would say. They're a language learning app, although they've expanded their app, their like learning capabilities within the app to other things like chess and math, and they're kind of broadening their scope. Well, CEO Louis von Ahn shared plans to gradually replace contract workers at the company with AI for tasks that they say can be automated. So they were, he was quick to specify this is not about replacing full-time workers, but yes, it is about taking a look at our contract workers and saying, okay, how much of this contract work can we replace with automation? And, there's other ways in which he's looking at using AI within the company, limiting new hires unless automation absolutely isn't possible, leveraging AI for repetitive tasks wherever possible, hiring, performance reviews, processes, all integrating AI into the scenario. So, yeah. And of course, depending on where you stand on AI is great versus AI is going to take everybody's jobs, probably, is the point at which we know your perspective on how you feel about this proclamation. But what do you think, Jeff?
So I'm a little concerned. The interview we'll talk about later. I think it brings up the concern, the worry that we're depending too much on a tool that we shouldn't depend upon. And I think the companies put themselves at risk when they think that this machine that has no sense of meaning can do jobs for you. Nonetheless, again, we'll say every single time, it does amazing things. It's phenomenal. But if you're running a company, what part of the tasks can you safely give to this machine or these applications? That's one. Two, I wonder what the roles are. I just went to Duolingo, and there's plenty of jobs to be hired for. If I look at the freelance, Duolingo English test trainer in India, institutional engagement contractor in Ireland. Are these the ones that, because they're part-time, that they recruiting program manager, design sourcer, whatever that is? It sounds like a sorcerer with a hat on.
Right, with a hat.
Right. So are those the kinds of jobs that they will now hand over because they're the contract jobs? And then if you look at the main jobs, they've got, VP of product, associate creative director. Those are full-time jobs that you probably can't hand over, but that AI could have a role in. So I guess
certainly has a role in, I would imagine, to some degree.
right. So I guess this idea that it's binary. Either the job is done by the human or the AI, I think is getting a bit ahead here. And that's a little worrisome. If I were working in the company thinking, oh, now I've got a robot, staring me down, saying, are they thinking they can replace me? As opposed to, what more can I do? How can I do my job better with it?
How can we fuel our capabilities and increase our capabilities with these tools instead of, hey, these jobs are no longer necessary because we've got automation tools that will take care of it entirely, or whatever the case may be. Or, I think to your point, as I think about this, there's still someone managing the AI that's taking care of those roles. So, it might be automation is able to replace some of these tasks that this contract worker does, but it doesn't necessarily replace employees wholesale because there's still human involvement, I have to imagine, to some degree there.
If I were in a company still, I guess I'd be trying to draw charts about what tasks, and task is the right word. I don't think it's job. I think it's task.
Yes. Yeah. Good clarification.
What tasks could be replaced by, and there are some tasks, right? Sending out form letters. I think you could, we've automated a lot of that already. It's not that big a deal. Okay. What tasks could be aided by this? And what does that aiding mean? Does it mean that we're faster, more efficient, better at it, more creative, catch things we wouldn't have caught? What is it we're looking for to use this? It's just a machine. And I think that we're the problem with the hype and PR is that we're already at the presumption of general intelligence when it ain't there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they so want to be there. And I mean, in the case of Duolingo, when we look historically speaking, I can't remember exactly when. I could probably look it up real quick, but the exact year that Duolingo launched. But they were an app-first company. Early, I want to say early 2010s, somewhere around there, 2010, 2011,
June
2012.
19, 2012.
Okay, so 2012. And when they launched as an app-first company, is my understanding. They didn't necessarily launch with like a website that also has an app. It was like, no, this is all in on the app ecosystem. And, in many ways, they were taking a risk at that time to say, we can have a business that is entirely within the app, and that risk paid off for them. I think their perspective on their business is, we knew what we were doing before anyone else knew what we were doing, like that we were doing it right, that we were going app first, and that it worked for us. And I think they see AI as another opportunity to do that. Oh, we've got to ride the wave. We've got to be there early, not late. And so let's just commit the way we did when we were app first, when we first launched, and that worked for us. And, time will tell if how spot on that decision is this time around, comparatively speaking.
So the letter to staff from Luis von On goes into this and says that AI isn't just a productivity boost, quoting here. It helps us get closer to our mission. To teach well, we need to create massive amount of content, and doing that manually doesn't scale. So that's the first thing. If you're reading this thing and thinking, well, I'm making lessons, and examples. AI also helps us build features like video call that were impossible to build before. I guess that's a coding thing. For the first time ever, teaching as well as as the best human tutor is within our reach. So the tutor should be nervous. Being AI first means we will need to rethink how we work. Making minor tweaks to systems designed for humans won't get us there. In many cases, we'll need to start from scratch. We're not going to rebuild everything overnight, and some things, like getting AI to understand our code base, will take time. However, we can't wait for the technology to be 100% perfect. That's really like, okay, before you blame me for doing stupid stuff, it's going to do it.
Right.
So we'll gradually stop using contractors to do the work that AI can handle. AI will be part of what we look for in hiring. AI use will be part of what we evaluate in performance reviews. Oh, okay, I use ChatGPT to do this stupid thing. Headcount will only be given if a team cannot automate more of their work. Most functions will have specific initiatives to fundamentally change how they work. So this is aggressive.
It is very aggressive. Yeah, and I think if you go to the LinkedIn post, it's interesting that it was an all hands email that was then shared on LinkedIn by the CEO as like in the form of a screenshot of the email. I don't know, there's something interesting about it. Like when you read through the comments, you either see right on, it's the right move, or probably what you see more of is people saying, stuff like this top comment I'm looking at. How about you replace your CEO with AI first? People are like, this is okay. Like, what is the point? I think a lot of these people are like, what are you trying to convey with this news right now? Is it rah, we are awesome? Or, it's to a certain degree, it's kind of like, are you reading the room well enough?
Right.
Right. A lot of people are not responding with good.
And I'm looking at the stock price with the market right now. There's 100 factors that affect any stock price, and it doesn't seem to change in any substantial way. Before this announcement,
not alone in doing this,
was about 383. Now they're at 382. So no difference.
Yeah. Well, and there was just news this morning that I saw on Tech Meme right before doing the show that Duolingo announced 148 new courses, adding to the catalog, more than doubling its courses for non-English speakers, all of them created with the use of generative AI. So immediately kind of saying, check out how much new we are bringing. This is the company's largest content expansion, by the way. And so they're basically putting their money where their mouth is as like as an immediate example of like, see what we were able to do with AI. Now, do we know the quality of that generative AI content that's flooding the service? Are people going to start recognizing flaws and issues in these translations or in the approach through the app? And if so, there's an easy target to blame at this point.
Yeah, as an educator, I suppose I should not be glib about dismissing this. Because there are ways that we can use it better. I mean, I'm working on a program at Stony Brook called Technology, AI, and Society. I have a course in the course catalog this fall in AI and creativity, but that's more about AI. And so the question is using AI in the curriculum. One thing I've wanted to do in education for years is to enable people to learn certain skills however they want to learn them. Mm-hmm. That rather than spending classroom in journalism in these days, you spend a lot of classroom time working on the tools. This is how you use this audio tool, this video tool, cameras, and so on. That can be handed over in the past to YouTube to a great extent. Mm-hmm. Go find the YouTube that you like best, learn how to do it that way, get a textbook, however you want to learn. I always wanted to start a Genius Bar in the school. Now AI is another way to do it. And so I think there are opportunities, and maybe the rest of us in education should watch Duolingo with interest, but with caution.
Yeah, interesting caution. Yeah. Aunt Pruitt, our friend Aunt Pruitt, is watching live right now. Aunt, it's good to see you. It says, if this is about replacing contract workers, it matters not. The company clearly didn't want to commit to having the 1099 workers as W-2 workers. That's the problem with most of the workforce today. W-2 workers cost more money to employers, bottom line. Yeah,
yep, it's true that.
It's all of those things kind of colliding at a moment that is very uncertain when it comes to job security and a number of.
Well, speaking of uncertainty, Google, as a competitive threat to Duolingo, just launched AI tools for practicing language through personalized lessons.
I'm
So
happy you put this in here because I forgot to place this in here. Yeah, very interesting.
it is, and I think it's if you're Duolingo, you're saying, "Uh-oh," and Google
Okay.
can do this well. Now, of course,
Yeah.
for those of you who used to watch me in the old Twig, will know that when I tried to use this, guess what happened? I'm not allowed to use it because I have a Google, whatever they call an account, and I'm paying
Works.
Google, and even then I can't use it. If you used it for free, you could use it, and I can't use it, and I'm pissed off. But anyway,
Yeah, I know.
once I figure out how to
Sucks.
get into it, I'll try to the ever futile effort to improve my German.
Oh, Google's coming for Duolingo's AI generated lunch right now.
Yep.
And so there's a few stories in this kind of top block that all work so well together. Another one is a an economic study in Denmark. Economists Anders Humlum and Amelie Vestergaard. Hope I'm pronouncing those right. They analyzed the impact of AI chatbots on 11 occupations that have commonly been cited as vulnerable to automation. So things like accounting, journalism, IT support, among a number of others. The study itself found no significant impact of AI chatbots on earnings or hours worked. It also had very little measurable effect on job loss or wage reduction. It is important to note that it included 25,000 workers in Denmark during 2023 to 2024. And that makes me wonder, like, okay, like there's probably some truth to this, but man, everything moves so fast in the world of technology and AI right now. Is that already outdated? Like, have things shifted drastically even since this was conducted? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to interpret this. My first response to that story was that AI is not having the impact everybody thought.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal yet. And these companies that are going to say we're AI first and we're going to get rid of people and we're going to not hire. Maybe maybe you're right, Jason. We're at the beginning stages of that. It wouldn't show up in that story yet, but we haven't seen much
Or maybe it
impact, which I
won't.
think is really interesting. Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an oversold opportunity. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, the study did have some counterpoints to even that. It found that workers' new job tasks often offset the time savings gained from automation. So the new tasks that they get, even with these tools, it's kind of like you're taking your time and your effort, and you're not suddenly freed up with all this extra time. It's just directed into a different place, related to tasks like reviewing the AI output for mistakes, of course. So you can get these systems to create all this stuff. You still have to, as we repeat time and time again, you still have to go through it and make sure that it's even accurate. It can
Yeah.
give you a pile of garbage, and you have to then sift through it. Now your job becomes, garbage analysis. To make sure that it's even right to begin with, and that doesn't take a small amount of time. That
No, in some
takes
ways it's harder. If you've made it
Yeah.
yourself, you know what you're doing. If you don't have to look
Yeah.
for mistakes, it's the difference between writing and editing. And the other question is, if and when efficiencies are found, where does that benefit? I'm writing a book, as I mentioned, about the linotype, which changed typesetting, and a typesetter by hand would come in noon to 3 and have to put back all the pieces of type from yesterday, and then work furiously for some number of hours, and that stretch could be 12 to 13 hours.
Wow.
Once the machine came in, they got an 8-hour day. But all the stuff that was kind of worthless to do went gone, and there was a similar amount of time actually working, but it was a more civilized time. So the benefit went to a shorter workday. Number one. Number two, the benefit, they did end up with fewer people for a brief amount of time, but the benefit went into investing in thicker papers and thicker magazines and more magazines and so on, and faster and better news and so on. So how you invest this dividend from technology is a question we don't know. The presumption, I think, is, well, it goes right into job loss. Not necessarily. It may go into investment, and we can now do more things, which is part of what Duolingo is trying to say.
Yes, yeah, and it remains to be seen, how that's going to work for them. This report also did say productivity gains were marginal.
Hmm.
Users saved 2.8% of their work hours using the tools. And I mean, I from my own perspective, as we've talked about, I use AI tools for a lot of what I do. There are many ways in which I rely on these tools now for things that I would have had to start from scratch before. So it's like I would still have probably gotten done a lot of this stuff anyways. Would it be to the same quality? Would it be different? It's kind of hard to say. Like when I look at my workload, it's hard now because I'm so used to the current workflow. It's hard now for me to consider not having those tools in place and doing it. But I probably would have been able to do most of what I do right now, and I think the work is just directed differently.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not like by using these tools, I suddenly have 3 or 4 extra hours to go out on my back patio and sit in the sun. Like, I'm working harder than I ever have, and I'm relying on these tools.
Uh, uh, yeah, and the dog's not getting walked as more.
Right. And I don't want. By the way, I don't want a robot to walk my dog either. I
No.
want that time. So
Good
come on.
exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope I'm finishing up the current book, and I want to work on the next one. And I'm going to try now to keep everything that I work on in PDFs, so that I can see whether just being able to query folders. I don't want to use it to write the book, but I want to see if it can make me any better at getting the information faster. Because right now what I'm
Yeah.
doing is I wrote the book, and now I'm going through every piece of thousands of pieces of paper I have, and the scores of books to go back through and see what I left out. And then I see,
Oh.
oh, I'm missing that footnote, or gee, did I mention this more than once? Or I thought there was another quote, or let me find the better one, right? Can I become a little more fluid in how I do that with AI? It may be a whole bunch of effort going nowhere, but I'm going to try it out.
Interesting, man. You've got a lot of patience, and
Oh, no, I
yeah.
don't. Oh, no.
That would be so incredibly hard for me to go back over all that work and take all that time. I'm so impatient at a certain
Yeah,
point.
but
I'm
what
just like, I
happened,
just
what
want to move
happens
on.
is I find something neat. I just found a piece from 1931 for the president of the Typographical Union in the year 1900 with scenes that I didn't know existed before. Because I went to one rabbit hole to the next rabbit hole, to the next rabbit hole, and I found something. So it's rewarding.
Yeah, that's true. You found the gold. You found the treasure that was hiding
Exactly.
underneath. Well, again, when we're talking about times moving fast in the world of AI, this next story ties nicely into that, and then we'll take a
Yeah,
quick
this is
break.
all the employment block.
Yes, indeed. And it kind of extends beyond this block as well, but we'll get to that. Wall Street Journal has an article that looks at prompt engineering. You remember that title? Oh, it wasn't that long ago that this was like a big, big deal, right? Companies, just a couple of years ago, companies were looking into how they can capitalize and maximize and all the I's around AI. And prompt engineer as a title was a highly sought after, highly paid career or job task, primarily because, as it turns out, the models themselves weren't as good at understanding kind of what humans were looking for and asking questions. These people were valued because of their expertise on getting these AI models to spit out the best results. They knew how to ask it, they knew how to follow up, they knew all that stuff. Well, that was just 2 years ago. And now this job title is like kind of non-existent, definitely lesser of a necessity for these jobs because these systems, they're better at understanding user intent. They're better at asking clarifying questions, or asking in air quotes. And so the need for this job title has faded to make way for AI trainer, data specialist, security specialist, all sorts of other higher positions in the realm.
To give some numbers to it, according to LinkedIn, user searches, on Indeed, not LinkedIn, user searches on Indeed for the role surged from 2 searches per million in January 2023 to 144 per million in April of 2023, only in a few months, right? That's how a hype trend will go. And then now it's flatlined at about 20 to 30 searches per million on Indeed. But I think you're right, Jason. Obviously, the models got better at interacting, but I wonder too whether there was kind of an osmosis training of the humans. that we got better at understanding how
We
to
got
ask
better
it.
at knowing.
Yeah,
That's a
because
really good
again,
point. Yeah.
I'm now finding myself even changing with the Google One Bar, or whatever it's called, where before you just put in a word you were looking for. You put in we were trained for keywords for years and years and years and years, and now I'm starting to ask questions, right? Because it works, because it's tied into the AI, and so it's becoming more common, that and Google Assistant, not Siri, unfortunately. You sorry, you Apple guys, and other things like that. I think we're being trained to now not just search, but to query, to ask questions.
Yeah, yeah. Our knowledge around how to work with these systems in a
Yeah.
couple of years has definitely increased. I can speak from my own personal experience. The more I've used it, the more I understand how to use it, and definitely even in the last couple of months, my interactions with it have become far more complex than they were a year ago. Just because I have a better understanding for myself of kind of what makes sense to get those better results, and how to phrase that and everything. I've also noticed that a lot of these models, through the reasoning, the air quotes reasoning that they've been built with, they've become a little better at taking an initial prompt and reprompting around it. So trying to make a guess as far as what the user intent was with that initial prompt, and then through the system going, let's rewrite the prompt to be this because we think this is what the user is going for, and then that prompt ends up giving you, potentially giving you better outcome as well. So it's kind of doing the role of a prompt engineer.
Yes, itself. Right, right.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting to me is, as I look at this, is that the presumption that there was going to be a job called prompt engineer, and I was among those who said, "Oh, it's going to be a new hot thing, a new hot skill," was that somebody else was going to do the prompting. It's like an executive wasn't going to do email. An executive was going to get his email printed out.
Ship it off to the prompt engineer. Let them
Right.
figure it out.
Right. Or there used to be rooms full of typists. Women were called typewriters before the machine was. And that's kind of ridiculous because this is a tool that everybody uses. So it's not something you hive off. And I think the first response to a new technology is to find a specialization so that we don't have to learn it, we who are in charge. And then eventually you find out, no, I got to type. No, I got to prompt it. I got to ask prompts. That's like we all have to do it.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Yep.
Well, the fascination continues after the break. We've got kind of a check-in on LlamaCon, which is underway, and Satya Nadella has made some really interesting comments about work and coding and all that. Lots of stuff to discuss coming up after the jump. Yeah, so LlamaCon underway. Meta has, there's a few pieces of news that we can talk about from here. First of all, and this ties in with a conversation that we've had a couple of weeks ago around ChatGPT wanting to get into social, and like what would that product look like and everything. And I think now we're starting to see that this is definitely a trend, that they all are kind of headed in that direction because they all travel in packs, it seems. But Meta has announced its standalone app. That's Meta AI standalone app. Meta, of course, in the past has just integrated its AI into its products like Facebook and Instagram and Messenger and everything. Well, now they have a standalone app, kind of, as The Verge puts it, like a ChatGPT competitor app. And it has all the familiar features that you would expect. You've got chatting, you've got image generation, real-time web results, that sort of stuff. But because this is Meta, it also includes a social twist. There is a Discover feed as part of the app experience that lets users see, like, comment on, and remix how their friends and other people using the app are interacting with Meta AI. So it's like a social feed built around your creations. It also shares your prompts. So, other people can learn, speaking of prompt engineering, other people can learn how to get their own output that's similar to, what's being shared there. It's also personalized using data from users' Facebook and Instagram activity. I think that's got quite a few people like a little nervous, considering the amount of information and personalized information that's shared on these social media platforms. So yeah, that's how Meta's doing it.
So I'm right now downloading the app because I should have done that before the show to see what it
Yeah,
is.
I've
So
not
it
played with
is a
the app yet.
standalone app, right?
Hmm.
And check my email with the code. Ay, 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 ay. Uh, but what freaks me, I'm not going to say I'm a freak because that sounds a little moral panicky, but what concerns me
Hmm.
is that you're roping in your friends into the AI without their knowledge and their information and your interactions. And because it's a learning machine, because it can do things, you start to wonder whether this is going to cause a bit of a privacy panic, concerns, worries, and
I
so on
think
and so
there's
forth.
already a little bit of that.
Because it's
I
meta,
think people,
and
yeah,
people are
right,
concerned.
exactly.
So when I interviewed Zuckerberg many years ago for my book Public Parts, which no one bought, and they had that program. I'm forgetting the name of it. I meant to look it up before the show. Another thing I meant to do before the show, which was telling you what your friends just bought. And it was a privacy nightmare because maybe you bought your wife a present, or maybe you bought your paramour a present, and you didn't want this out, and it seemed okay. And Zuckerberg backed way off, and he said this was a huge mistake. And I said, "No, I thought you could. I think you could fix this." He says, "No, this is never going to be. It was wrong. We shouldn't have done it." Well, I kind of wonder whether this is heading that way.
Yeah, do you think, are you saying that maybe Meta will regret potentially kind
I
of going
wonder.
down this road?
I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of regret in big tech right now.
Yeah.
Maybe eventually. But I mean, tied to AI specifically, it really seems like a lot of what's been happening is unregretting. They were incredibly cautious, or maybe not incredibly cautious, but they were more publicly cautious even 6 months ago. And now we've undergone this like shedding of caution in almost entirely across the board. The landscape and the oxygen, politically speaking, and from a big tech perspective, has really shifted in recent months. Maybe eventually they regret it, but I think right now it seems like they've all kind of agreed, whether explicitly or not, that you know what, if these things, if these systems get things wrong, or if these systems make bad mistakes and somebody's privacy gets infringed upon, whatever, it's worth it for the business gains that come down the line. And they all seem to be playing by that playbook now. And so I do wonder, yeah, if that regret will ever happen.
So I just downloaded it.
Not
Again,
certain.
apologies that I've been doing this as I go. So
Yeah.
what it amounts to is it looks to me like things that people can create in with AI to make a, what's the word we use now for junk that's added in from
Oh, a
AI?
slop.
Slop. It kind of looks like Slop Social.
Slop
That's a,
Social,
that's a,
man.
that's a 2 second judgment here. But I don't
Goodness, that's
necessarily
a good
want a
title.
lot of people's made up. Imagine a Lego style beach vacation on Santorini. Okay, I could imagine that, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Papal conclave reimagined as whimsical fairy tale scene. I don't care. Miley Cyrus at Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tool. Well, did that actually happen? Is that a photo or is that made up? Right? I don't know now because now I'm pegged. Imagine a Prada runway show where all the clothes are made out of croissants.
Croissant. Oh, that totally happened. No,
Yeah,
right.
you might find that amusing. I don't know.
Well, there it is. Okay.
There it is. So it's a bunch of people using AI to make up crap.
Yeah.
Uh, I
Because when you socialize these tools, like, I guess what's occurring to me is like, if you take these tools and you socialize it and add in social kind of sharing functionality and everything, it's probably not going to be much more than crap, right? It's going to be
right.
people who are bored using it, going, check out this funny image that I created that you never thought you needed to see, but here it is. The problem is, like, we're a couple of years into this already, and people have already seen the outrageous and the unbelievable, in image form. And oh my goodness, they've gotten over
Yes,
the fact
yes,
that
yes.
these image creators can do these things. And so it's kind of table stakes. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, like I've seen a million image generators at this point. Like, what's different other than the fact that we can share these things? And do I actually want to see what people are sharing here? Because it all kind of has that similar kind of glossy,
Right.
I don't
Right.
care
That
about it
aesthetic.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Ant says in the chat on YouTube, sounds like Mid-Journey Discord. Exactly, that
Yeah.
exists.
Right.
And so in the interview we're going to tell you about later in the show, we had a discussion, which you'll see in a few days, about creativity in AI. And the
Yeah, we can
authors
say who it
talked to,
was.
okay,
It's Emily Bender.
Emily Bender and Alex Hanna,
Alex Hanna.
who have a
Yeah.
new book out called The AI Con.
Yes.
And so their argument in the book is that AI is not really a collaborator with creativity. And I pushed back on that a bit because I still think that the people who are intimidated by writing or intimidated by drawing or intimidated by music can now express themselves if it is in their control and if it doesn't homogenize them into all that came before. But the key difference between what I just said and what we see here in Meta AI is that there's a purpose to that creativity.
Right.
I want to say something and I want to illustrate it because I have a message I want to get across and I use the tool to help me say what I wanted to say instead of cats in Meta sunglasses pose on Lego figures.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no
I mean,
purpose to it.
And I
this is
think a
early.
lot of people are going to see this stuff in a feed and be like, "Oh my God, just get the like we said earlier, get the AI slop out of here." Like, I don't want to see any more of these ridiculous images. Maybe there'll be some that are awesome and hilarious and whatever. But yeah, I wonder how much of a hunger there is around this stuff. Very interesting. I mean, you mentioned Meta Ray-Ban. By the way, Zuckerberg had a video that he shared where he's talking about the app, and he's donning the Meta Ray-Bans throughout that. He's also donning the Meta Ray-Bans talking to Satya Nadella on stage, by the way. But here's the video. I don't have audio playing right now, but you can kind of see. Here's up close and personal.
There's four eyes.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
There he is.
It does make him look nerdier. Says
Yeah.
I, who wears glasses.
Yeah. Anyway, Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, took the stage at LlamaCon with Mark Zuckerberg, as you can see right here. And there is where Satya shared. And by the way, it's a fireside chat. I just want to point out there's never a fire at the fireside chat.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, probably a good thing, but maybe call it something else. I don't know. It's such a small issue to nitpick. But Zuckerberg asked Nadella how much of the code inside Microsoft was generated by AI. And Nadella claimed that 20 to 30% of the code inside Microsoft's repositories was, quote, written by software. He didn't say written by AI, at least not in that quote. But that was the question that was asked. He had shared at that point that the company is seeing mixed results with AI generated code in different languages. Python is popping, C++, not so much. For what it's worth, Nadella asked Zuckerberg the same question. Zuckerberg did not have an answer, which I kind of feel like, really? You didn't have an answer? Like, you should have that answer. Like, tout it yourself. If it's as great as you want everybody to believe it is, have that answer, Zuckerberg. But anyways,
Maybe he's afraid of a coders union.
yeah. Oh, that could be. I mean, reaction to this, of course, has been a high percentage of skepticism. It's like, wait a minute, Microsoft, 20 to 30% of your code written. What does that actually mean?
Right.
And many are taking Satya to task for the fact that, the code is buggy as is. Like, can't wait to see what this impact is on consumers using these products, if that's actually true.
I'm old enough to remember when code had to pass test after test after test before it was shrink wrapped, because once it was gone on the shrink wrap, you couldn't get it back. You couldn't change it. And between that and today, where yeah, it's good enough for now. We'll change it tomorrow. It's okay. Okay,
Good enough for
got
gas.
bugs. Yeah,
Or whatever that quote was.
close enough for AI.
Close enough for Jack. Altman and Nadella igniting the modern AI boom together. Now drifting apart. You put this in here.
Yeah, it's a Wall Street Journal saying what we kind of
Yeah.
already know, but it is interesting that and I don't know who got the better of this relationship, because
Right.
Microsoft beat Google by tying with OpenAI and ChatGPT to seem as if they were more AI savvy. Though, as I always say, Google was doing tons of things with AI. They just weren't as good at marketing it. Then, of course, came the big kerfuffle of Altman's firing and all that, where Nadella didn't know anything and he had fits, and it's a difficult relationship. Now comes the restructuring of OpenAI, which is going to mean a renegotiation of Microsoft's piece of the equity. So none of this is surprising, but it'll be interesting in a few years to look back and say who got the better of this deal.
Yeah, history will tell that story for sure. Yeah,
And I think it's an open question. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, very interesting. Drifting apart. It was fun while it lasted. And I guess
And then there's another argument that says that Microsoft's not doing so well, and that Suleiman is not bringing them the heat that they should have at this point. And so there's a current argument that says that OpenAI is ahead, but I don't know.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, we should get Suleiman on the podcast. We'll just
That'd be
throw
great.
that out there, and you can talk about that. OpenAI getting into the shopping business with ChatGPT. This broke earlier this week. Users can search for, compare, and start the purchase process. Similar to agents, you can't complete the purchase process without human interaction. You actually have to do that on the individual sites. But this is, basically shopping hooks, tendrils, whatever you want to call them, coming into OpenAI's ChatGPT product, offered to all users, so you don't have to be signed in, of course, because it's money we're talking about. Although OpenAI does say that this is not keyword driven, it's contextually driven. It is not about ads, and like affiliate revenue is not even a part of it. Maybe part of the future, but not part of the initial rollout right now. They're just kind of saying this is all organic, based on user preferences, pulling from a blend of editorial and user-generated reviews like Reddit, that sort of stuff online, as well as previous interactions with the chat system, ChatGPT. So, shopping in your ChatGPT. There you go. And Google is not shaking in its boots or shaking in its boots. I don't even know. Researchers from the University of Zurich secretly conducted a research, or rather an unauthorized experiment on Reddit's subreddit called Change My View. They used AI-generated comments to persuade users in that subreddit into changing their opinions on certain sensitive issues, also impersonating different personas, analyzing users' post histories to drive the conversation and shape the conversation. Used to post more than 1,700 comments in total. Those personas that I'm talking about included trauma counselors, sexual assault survivors, people with strong stances on very contentious issues. Yeah, and very basically violated terms of service, Reddit's terms of service, as well as the subreddit's rules, because they didn't disclose this up front. And Reddit is pushing back with legal concerns, a legal action complaint. Universities backing down. But I'm curious to hear, because this is your University of Zurich. Like, what are your thoughts?
So I think this is more of a tempest because it has the letters A and I involved in it. Okay. Researchers do this kind of thing all the time. And yes, they've been doing it on social media, where they've gone in and tried to understand what would happen if we do this, if we do that. How do we convince people? How do they know if it's truth? How do they know it's falsehood? Do fact checks make things better or worse? They do A/B tests like crazy. Now, I don't know what the protocol is in Zurich, but in the U.S., if you want to experiment with human beings, you have to go before the university's IRB, Institutional Review Board, which is a body that rules on the ethics and necessary transparency, and are you screwing with people's brains? I think part of this is people say, well, they're screwing with their brains. They're trying to convince us stuff. Well, advertising does it every day. Media does it every day. Politicians do it every day. Your friends do it every day, right? Everybody tries to screw with everybody else's brains because they're trying to convince people of things. Not a big deal. And so I find this to be a bit of a tempest, to use that word again.
Reactive.
Yeah, I think it is reactive. And so, but, well, another thing, if they had revealed it, that pretty much ruins the experiment. You're trying to see whether AI can have this kind of reaction
That's
or
true.
not. So the researchers came into Reddit and said, and I quote, "We acknowledge the moderator's position that this study was an unwelcome intrusion in your community, and we understand some of you may feel uncomfortable. This experiment was conducted without prior consent. We believe the potential benefits of this research substantially outweigh its risks. Our controlled, low-risk study, pardon me, provided valuable insight into the real-world persuasive capabilities of LLMs, capabilities that are already easily accessible to anyone and that malicious actors could already exploit at scale for far more dangerous reasons." In an email, a spokesperson from the University of Zurich said the researchers had been advised by the university's ethics committee, their version of IRB, that the rules of the platform should be fully complied with. I'm not sure what happens. So in light of these events, the Ethics Committee of the Faculty of Arts and Science intends to adopt a stricter review process in the future. So it had, the kerfuffle had its impact. They'll try to be more careful. But I do think there is a point in trying to do research like this to understand when people are out there saying, oh my God, LLMs can convince us to go to war. Well, are they that persuasive or not? How do we know? Are they more persuasive than humans? What does it mean to be persuaded? That's valuable research, I think.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay. All right. Yeah. I think you're probably, I think you're spot on as far as kind of like the general stink attached to it with AI kind of being in the mix. I think the fact that, it's a lot of, there's a lot of sensitive issues and sensitive kind of personas that that the study resulted in kind of these, imitating, there's the word I'm looking for, imitating these sensitive personas like, sexual trauma expert or someone, suffering from sexual trauma. That also kind of takes it to another level where, it just potentially through the process has some sort of direct impact on someone who might be sensitive to that issue. So there's something there too, but it does kind of seem like this is more about, AI is involved. We aren't really happy with the direction of AI and the potential of deceit, which comes up a lot around AI. And so therefore, it's taken to task. But yeah, interesting.
Yep.
All right, let's take a break. And then let's talk a little bit about our awesome interview, which everybody's going to be able to check out here in a couple of days. That's coming up here in a moment. All right, you and I took some time with someone who comes up, two people who come up on the show pretty frequently. Emily Bender, of course, Stochastic Parrots, claim to fame, I would say, co-author, and Alex Hanna from the DARE Institute. And they both have co-authored a book, The AI Con, of which both Jeff and I have it, How to Fight Big Tech's Hype and Create the Future We Want. And I don't know. I don't know about you, Jeff, but it was a fantastic conversation. We had about 45 minutes to talk with them, and we covered a lot of ground that really gave me a lot to think about when it comes to kind of the terminology, because Emily Bender is a linguist, of course, and so I did a lot of like real deep thinking around the terminology that we use when it comes to like labeling everything AI, and what does that actually mean, and does that overshadow other aspects of the technology, both good and harmful? And I don't know, what were your thoughts from the conversation?
Yeah, I think the book is very interesting. I sped read it beforehand to get through. And Bender, as you say, is a linguist at University of Washington. And I've quoted her often from the paper. Also, I get her to explain a National Library of Thailand thought experiment she has about how LLMs and actually deal with language and what would the equivalent in our minds be. And they're somewhere on a needle between cautious about AI and negative on AI. And I think they do acknowledge that there are good uses, but they're very cautious on how it's used, and they're cautious on the hype, and that the hype is overblown to an extreme.
Yeah, there is a lot of hype, that's for sure. So we pulled out a little clip just to kind of give you a taste of the interview. The interview is going to publish to your podcast feed, as we're going to do this with interviews kind of going forward. Separate the news episode from the interviews episode. It's going to publish to the feed this Saturday. That's my plan, is to publish it on Saturday. But we do have a clip here. This is where we dig into what's left when the hype and the misuse of AI is stripped away. You actually asked this question in this clip, Jeff. You'll hear Emily and Alex break down which applications of language-based AI make a positive difference, why community control and transparency actually matters a lot, why big tech's one-size-fits-all approach falls short, and especially for underrepresented languages. So check out this clip of what's to come.
Great job in the book of skewering the hype. And I think that there's two angles here. There's the hype and there's the misuse of these technologies. So I'd like to get down to a base case, if it exists, of if you strip away the hype and you strip away the bad use using LLMs on search engines and so on and so on, what are the good uses that we should or could be concentrating on? What's left?
I'll start with language modeling, but then pass it over to Dr. Hanna, who I think has other areas that she might be more excited about. But, language models are models of the distributions of word forms and text, and they're an important component of things like automatic transcription and machine translation systems, which need to be used carefully, right? Because with automation, it's going to have a certain error rate, and you're going to be able to tell what that error rate is, and it's going to vary across contexts. But I have no problem with that kind of automation in general. I'm a little bit concerned about the ways in which it is being done right now with the so-called large language models, because they're sort of bringing in everything, and instead of doing a very clean, input to output, it's like input gets encoded into the vector space, and then we just sort of let the language model go, and it can output lots of stuff that's completely unmotivated in the input. But in general, there are technologies under the AI umbrella, including ones that use language modeling, that I think are fine. And they're about basically translating from one form of language into another form of language.
Let me stay on that 1 second before we move to the rest of the world with Dr. Hanna. I wonder, what strikes me about the training sets and the use of these large language models is that it creates a concordance of available text, which it strikes me would be useful. And I'm curious, for you as a linguist, what other connections and data might come out, not to create text, not to extrude it, but instead, for these large data sets that now exist, are there other research opportunities that are being ignored?
I see. So there's a lot of really interesting things you can do with linguistic corpora, but in order to do any science with that, you have to know what's in the corpus, right? And so these absolutely enormous, undocumented, sort of obscure data sets are actually not scientifically interesting.
Got it.
Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to thinking about the technology, we could have a lot of hosts of visions of what we could do with language modeling. I mean, backing up in my background, I did some language modeling in my dissertation. I mean, the whole thing was, let's build a classification system that helps us identify articles that mention protest, which is actually super helpful for social movement scholarship. And I mean, I think the main gist of it is thinking about what types of automation are going to be helpful for particular groups and for particular communities, right? And so fast forwarding to the end of the book, maybe jumping all the way to chapter 7, we talk about a few different organizations like Teheku Media that has produced machine translation, automatic speech recognition tools for the Tere Maori language. So using these things, which are then trained on language that has community control with certain access privileges. So there's particular institutions that know what's going into the data, can control how that's being used. Meanwhile, they compared this to OpenAI's Whisper, their automatic speech recognition tool, and effectively this thing was not able to do very well, was not able to do this kind of code switching between Maori and English very well. And we have companies that want to come in and say, like OpenAI or Facebook or Meta, like, why are you, and they typically are going after like African language startups, and they say, why are you doing what you're doing? We've solved this, and they haven't solved this. They're doing a really piss poor job at doing this. These things are not under community control. There's not an ethical process of collecting those data. They're scraped without consent to speakers of those languages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So there are good uses for these types of automation specifically, and language and acoustic models in terms of automatic speech recognition.
All right. There we go. So yeah, lot to look forward to. We've got the full interview. It's about 45 minutes coming this Saturday. And yeah, like I said, it was a real eye opener because it's had me now since the interview really kind of questioning what I mean when I say AI, like this AI system or whatever. And I find myself using automation more because really at the end of the day, that's a large part of what Emily was driving the point home around, is how we talk about these systems really matters as far as how we understand them, the promises that companies, big technology companies, make around them. It's all shaped around how we talk about them and the language that is formed around them. And yeah, it's a really kind of eye-opening perspective to look at them through a different lens. So,
Yeah, automation fits in that full first block of our show today about employment.
yeah,
That's the right way to look at it.
exactly.
So
Exactly
please do
that.
watch.
Yes, indeed. And you won't have to go anywhere for it. Just, stay subscribed to the podcast or visit the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@AI Inside Show, and you'll find it there. We do have to wrap things up because we've got another interview that we're recording for next week. So that's coming up here. So stay tuned for that. More interviews coming down the pipeline. Jeff, thank you so much for being here and for talking through all these awesome topics around automation and AI. JeffJarvis.com is where people can go to check out all of Jeff's work, the Web We Weave, the Gutenberg Parenthesis magazine, and plenty more coming soon. You won't have to wait too long, hopefully, for that. AIinside.show. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can find it there. And then, of course, patreon.com/AI Inside Show. And if you go there, you can support us on a number of levels. But yes, you can support us as executive producers as well. Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina, Dante St. James, Bono Dayrick, Jason Knifer, and Jason Brady. Y'all are awesome. So thank you for your support. We literally could not do this show without all of you. And yeah, thank you again for watching, everybody. It's great to be here, and we'll look forward to the next episode of AI Inside. We'll see you very soon. Bye, everybody.